4 months in training. For long months lasted this time of waiting. Jesus had over 100 meetings with these 6 apostles and his own brother James. His other brother Judas was rarely able to attend these lessons due to illness in his family. During these months of procrastination and inaction, Jesus' mother Mary almost despaired of her son. Her faith, which had reached such a peak during the wedding at Cana, now dropped to a new low. She could only fall back on her so oft-repeated exclamation, "I can't understand him. I can't figure out what all this means." During these 4 months, these 7 believers got to know him. They became familiar with the idea of living together with this God-man. Although they called him Rabbi, they gradually learned not to be afraid of him. Jesus' personality radiated an unparalleled grace that he could live among them without his divinity discouraging them. They found it truly easy to be friends with God. This time of waiting severely tested the whole group of believers. Nothing miraculous took place. Day after day they were busy with their ordinary work, and night after night they sat at the feet of Jesus. They were held together by his supernatural personality and by the gracious words he spoke to them. This period of waiting and teaching was especially hard on Simon Peter. Repeatedly he tried to persuade Jesus to begin proclaiming the kingdom firmly. After all, John the Baptist was far away in Judea. But each time Jesus' answer to Peter was, "Be patient, Simon. Make progress. Surely we will not be completely finished when the Father calls us." Andrew also occasionally soothed Peter with his more mature and philosophical advice. Andrew had become greatly impressed by the human naturalness of Jesus. Again and again he marveled at it, how someone who lived so close to God could be so kind and caring to people. During this entire period, Jesus spoke only twice in the synagogue. By the end of this time of waiting, the stories of his baptism and the wine of Cana had receded slightly into the background. And Jesus made sure there were no more of these apparent miracles during this time. Although they lived so quietly, however, reports had trickled through to the court of Herod Antipas. Herod allowed himself to inquire what Jesus was up to. But when he learned that Jesus was back at work in a shipyard as usual, he decided not to bother Jesus. Herod, however, was concerned about John the Baptist's preaching. During this time of waiting, Jesus tried to teach his companions what their attitude should be toward the various religious groups and political parties. Jesus kept saying, "We try to win them all, but we belong to none of them." Jesus was referring to the Jewish religious groups. The Sadducees, the Pharisees, the Essenes, the Zealots, the Herodians, and also the Samaritans. All these groups believed that one day the Messiah would come. They all looked forward to a national liberator. But Jesus was very decisive. He and his disciples would not commit to any of these schools. The Son of Man would be neither a Nazarene nor a Zealot. Jesus emphasized the proclamation of the good news of the kingdom of heaven. Again and again he pressed his co-workers to show love, compassion, and sympathy. Early on, he taught his followers that the kingdom of heaven was a spiritual experience that had to do with God first in the hearts of men. As they waited these months for John the Baptist's career to end, Jesus and the 7 apostles spent 2 evenings a week in the synagogue studying the Hebrew scriptures. In later years, the apostles looked back on these 4 months as the most valuable, useful time in their dealings with the Master. Jesus taught these men only things they could handle. He did not make the mistake of teaching them too much. He did not confuse them by presenting them with truth that was far beyond their ability to comprehend.